Gorillas are ground-dwelling, predominantly herbivorous apes who inhabit the forests of central Sub-Saharan Africa. For most people, however, it will be easier to find them at the zoo. Me, personally, I have had many favorite animals over the years. Currently, that favorite animal is the gorilla. What I like about the gorilla is several things really. Firstly, I like how fictional they look. I personally think, and there's almost no doubt that several people will agree, that a gorilla looks way more fictional than a unicorn. Secondly, I like that they're all autistic. Because all gorillas are autistic. Now, normally, I don't like generalizing like this, but I have seen that generalizing and making absolute statements about very large groups of people has recently become not only an acceptable thing to do, but also somewhat mandatory to be accepted in society anymore. So I think that, considering the current political climate, it is appropriate to make statements like this. All gorillas are autistic. That's just how it is. I know though that sounds like a claim that is very ludicrous, and I'm aware of that. Autism tends to be a very cocky thing, associated with all kinds of weakness and social failings. And gorillas are obviously really just way too masculine, even the females, to be something as emasculated as an autistic person. And that, if you think that is why you are wrong. That is where everybody is wrong. Gorillas are completely misjudged in my opinion. Gorillas, by and large, are far from masculine actually. There are outliers, of course. There are gorillas who are somewhat masculine. The most important of which is found in fiction. King Kong certainly is very masculine. But other slightly less fictional gorillas usually are not. As he said, copying from Wikipedia again, gorillas are predominantly herbivorous. I anticipate that there will be people who don't know what the word herbivorous means, and that is okay, especially since I am probably mispronouncing it as it is such a luxurious word. What I have heard that the word herbivorous means is that they only eat plants. This I think calls the masculinity in question. Apart from walking in a lumbering manner, I think that meat consumption is the most important indicator of someone's masculinity. I think that only if more than a third of someone's dinner is meat can they truly consider themselves masculine. This is not something a gorilla would be minded to do. They also don't really walk in a very lumbering manner. Having been to the zoo and having observed the gorilla's behavior, I have to conclude that in actuality their walking is actually rather effeminate. There's a certain shameful quality to it, if you know what I mean. Standing still, they do indeed look masculine as fuck, regardless of gender. But as soon as they start walking, the veil is lifted, and you can see that gorillas truly are the sissiest of apes. We live in a society where you don't need to be an expert to make claims anymore about subjects. You don't need to have studied and stuff. All you need is for your claim to sound believable. If you cite studies, which I obviously never do, people aren't gonna look into it. Because nobody has the time to do that when there are literally a million subjects you are required by society to have an opinion on. No, in our society people don't have the time to look into things more deeply. You have to present an argument in a way that connects to people's personal experiences. In other words, you have to make sure that what you are saying, first and foremost, sounds like it could be true. We live in a society where things that sound believable are usually believed. While that is not technically a good thing, I think that a person who has observed gorillas in either the zoo or the so-called forest of Sub-Saharan Africa or something, a person who has seen with their own eyes how soft and how sensitive gorillas are, I don't think it sounds like too far of a stretch to say that all gorillas are autistic. And for me, the fact that it doesn't sound like too far of a stretch is enough for me to feel comfortable making that claim. But that is not truly what it is that I want to tell you. The title of this video is a red herring of sorts, and it is intended to serve as clickbait. Now that I have the attention of a small handful of people, what it truly is that I want to convince you of is not that all gorillas are autistic. I have a more serious message that I think needs to be heard. I want people to understand that anyone in your surroundings can turn out to be a gorilla unexpectedly. See, people don't want to be perceived as weak and sensitive. If one looks weak and sensitive, nature is often too cruel to let that weakness go unexploited. That is why, like a gorilla, a lot of people in our so-called society tend to make themselves look stronger and indeed more masculine than they truly are. This is important to remember, especially over the internet. Literally, the person you engage with might seem strong and certain of themselves, but it is very well possible that unbeknownst to you, they are actually a gorilla, soft and sensitive, but under the veneer of traditional masculinity. We have to imagine that whatever you say that is hurtful, or whatever could be perceived as hurtful by the type of person who neglected kids like to bully, stays with that person for weeks, and they will cry themselves to sleep for days. Therefore, it is necessary to treat every person as though they were a gorilla. We should treat every person as someone who is only apparently neurotypical. Verily I say unto you, neurotypicality is an illusion. Humanity has shaped society in a way that would hypothetically be navigable if your brain is average. But just as much as nobody has the average face, nobody has the average brain either. Neurotypicality is not a fact of nature. Rather, it's a very strong illusion that its very victims create for themselves in an attempt to navigate a society that is only truly all of the time navigable if you are a person who doesn't exist. To various degrees, we as a society are all autistic and gorillas. And that is important to realize if we want life to become slightly happier. Verily I say unto you also, behind every anonymous account that you hypothetically tell to shut up in a very creative way and with colorful language, there is also a person. Obviously to you, this person is not really anyone, they're literally just a person. You may argue that you don't owe them as a random stranger anything at all, literally they're just a person. Friends, family members, colleagues perhaps. Of those people it is intuitive to treat them with the utmost respect, but it seems when someone is just a person, the same respect cannot always be expected. One might argue that it would quickly become too emotionally taxing to treat literally every person you may encounter with respect. You must remember that persons are people too, and they need to be treated with some level of dignity, and the best way to do that is to treat them as though they were literally a gorilla.